Can everybody hear me okay? Is this working all right? Yay. All right, very good. Thanks, John, for the intro. A fellow Penn Stater over here, Jeff, so I'll talk to you later. But I appreciate being here. If anybody was expecting Victor Gaglio up here, well, sorry, you got me instead. But Victor had to go to one of our customer sessions this week, so I stepped in his place, put this together, and it's very different from what you've heard this morning. This is all about natural gas, really from the wellhead to the burner tip, just what we're all about. We do use Pi. We love to integrate data and utilize data. I'm a data geek from way back when I first started, so we'll see how it goes here. Hopefully you'll learn something out of all this that you didn't know coming in here. I don't know. There's a couple of gas guys I know in here from EQT, but otherwise I'm not sure so much. But this is what I'll be going over. Don't want to belabor this too much. John mentioned we're in the middle of the shale plays up here in the Northeast. I'm actually in Charleston, West Virginia myself, in our operational headquarters. I do have all my teeth. My wife has all her teeth. Her family has all their teeth. But yeah, we employ two. Well, maybe not. Maybe they were employed more because there aren't any teeth. I don't know. But anyhow, I'll hit on our experiences here eventually, but I'll just walk through all this stuff I have on here. But that's who we are, our assets. Many of you may know us as Columbia Gas Transmission. If you live in Ohio, it's Columbia Gas of Ohio. NiSource bought our company back about 10 years ago. So now we're under the umbrella of NiSource Gas Transmission and Storage. We've got the Columbia companies. But our network for, this isn't going to shine over there, the pipeline network that I work for, the interstate pipelines, we're all FERC regulated. We operate under that interstate umbrella. Our distribution companies, of course, are separate, but the group I work for is the FERC. And I'm most familiar, of course, with our storage facilities. Worked in the storage business for many years. We're one of the bigger operators in the country, nowhere close to as big as Kinder Morgan is now. After they bought El Paso, they're absolutely set a new behemoth out there. So we'll see how all that shakes out, but it could be an interesting next decade or so for the natural gas business. But just to put some relationship around some of those numbers, in the storage business anyway, we move about 7% of the available storage capacity in the U.S. That 15,000 miles of pipe is pretty big, and you can see from the drawing there that our network of pipes is not just a straight line, like from the Gulf of Mexico up to the Northeast where we operate. But up here, we've got this spaghetti network of pipe, and I'll hit on a little more of that a little bit later. I forget I have this guy down here. But the transportation system, where does gas come from? How does it get to where it's going? Well, it starts at the wellhead. E&P companies and nowadays a lot of independent natural gas outfits like Chesapeake, Range, those kind of companies are drilling for natural gas. Big oil companies are coming in, buying up a lot of those guys. Exxon's bought up some, Chevron. But anyway, it starts with producing wells. Those wells are gathered together, the pipeline network, into a bigger system that ultimately comes into a transmission system, the interstate pipes, like us. Underground storage is a piece that we have, part of the puzzle in the gas business, that electricity really doesn't have. Yeah, there's some batteries out there, but not in the magnitude scale like we're able to handle in the gas business. So we go from peak demands to low demands, and storage is the balancing mechanism. Supply likes to remain steady. Producers want to produce gas because that's their cash flow, so they want the gas to move all the time. The storage gives us that ability to take the gas and put it underground in times of low demand, take it back out of the ground in times of high demand. Just simply think of it as a warehouse to hold gas. Our particular company, or interstate gas companies, anymore, we don't buy gas. We don't sell gas. We offer service. We provide a service to others who are buying and selling gas. We're basically like a trucking company or the train system from years ago. And we'll charge folks a fee to reserve space in the pipe, reserve space in our storage, and a fee to move it in and out. And that's really our business. Ultimately, it goes to local distribution companies, also known as LDCs. This part of the world, that's Washington Gas, Baltimore Gas and Electric, in Ohio, Columbia Gas of Ohio, and many others. But those are the folks that actually sell it to the consumers on the residential side. Interstate gas network. I don't know if anybody realizes how much pipe is out there underground, but it's pretty intensive. The big pipes are concentrated in the areas where gas was produced, Gulf Coast, Texas, Oklahoma, those areas. Up here in the Northeast, Ohio, West Virginia, Pennsylvania. We've been producing gas up here, well, not in Washington, but in the Northeast, Pennsylvania, Ohio, since the turn of the century. Been around a long, long time. And our pipeline network was built based on that production from decades ago, very similar to the Gulf Coast. It was built the way it is because of the production that was there, and then dispersing it out to the end user sites. And you can see California, there's a couple pipes out there, not nearly the density that we have up here in the Northeast. Our storage facilities that we operate are all in our particular company, Ohio, West Virginia, Pennsylvania, and a couple up in New York. They're pretty well dispersed throughout our system so that we can meet the market needs wherever they might be. So what do gas wells look like? Well, these are a couple of drilling rigs. The one on the left, as you're looking at it, is a rig that was drilling a vertical well right outside my window there in Charleston, West Virginia. That's the state capitol building right on the river. Just put this one in there to kind of show you wells can be drilled anywhere. There's a lot of environmental pushback on drilling, and you read a lot about it, especially in the New York Times. A lot of negative publicity out there, but done properly, done with the right environmental controls and the right structures out there, it's a short-term impact to the environment, and then it's gone. These drilling rigs don't stay there forever. The one on the right side, that's a Range Resources rig in southwestern Pennsylvania. That one was drilling a Marcellus well. The one on the left's probably 2,000, 3,000 feet deep well, vertical. The one on the right was ultimately drilling a horizontal well 6,000 feet down and 4,000 some odd feet out horizontally. But just to give an idea of what it looks like after it's finished, the one in Charleston now looks like that. Where's the well? Well, it's actually that little red box, the cube that's structured there. The wellhead's inside that. This was built actually on the University of Charleston soccer complex. That's where that well was drilled. The guy that drilled it is a board of directors guy at the University of Charleston, and he did this as a big publicity thing. And ultimately, the school is getting their gas from that feed into the local distribution, and they paid nothing for it. He got everybody contribute their time and labor and equipment to drill that well, which was a pretty neat thing, but good PR. So gas wells, that's where things start. Horizontal drilling, I mentioned very briefly. It's simply drilling vertically down and angling out. And all that happens there, when you think about a structure underground, in this case, let's say this is Marcellus shale. Shale may be 200 feet thick. You drill vertically, you intersect with a 6-inch diameter, let's say, a hole that's 200 feet of thickness. You drill horizontally, now you got a 6-inch diameter for 4,000 to 6,000 feet long. That's inside that shale the whole time, so you get a much more efficient delivery of gas into that structure. Of course, you have to hydraulically fracture those wells to get the gas to move. But the George Mitchell that came up with the whole process to tap the shales was the genius behind all this. And you talk about the entrepreneurial spirit and taking an idea and committing your resources to it. Who knows how many millions of dollars it cost him to experiment, but ultimately it revolutionized this country as far as at least one source of energy. Pipelines, of course, you got to move the gas to market, so you need the pipelines. Processing. Natural gas, when it's produced, is mostly methane. Ultimately, when it comes to your house, you're burning methane. But there are other constituents with it initially. Not everywhere, but in many locations. And those constituents that have value to them are propane, butane, propane grills, butane lighters. And there's another product in there called ethane that's very, very difficult to get out. So the typical processing plant up in the Northeast is going to remove propane and butane. It's going to leave behind ethane, methane, some trace elements of nitrogen and CO2 and some others that have to be dealt with, but mostly methane. Ultimately, coming out of that plant, it's probably 90 to 95% methane gas. Compression to move it. Along the pipeline systems, there are compressor stations that pump the gas compress the gas is a more correct term, from a lower pressure to a higher pressure. It keeps the molecules moving along. That's simply a large site, interstate compressor station, and then inside one of those buildings you'll see units like this. These are reciprocating units. All they really are like giant automobile engines. This particular picture, they're 880 horsepower units. Your automobiles maybe 300 horsepower if you've got a pretty decent performance engine. So they're big units, a lot of steel to them, but that picture, those units are 1965 vintage, so they last a very, very long time if they're maintained, and that's where the PI data and that information really comes into play for a company like us that's trying to maintain reliability and flexibility for our customers. Because as I said, we're providing a service. If we don't provide that service, if this stuff breaks down, that's when we can lose our market. Storage fields themselves, what do they look like? Well, they're just an old production field that's been converted to natural gas storage. Initially, we produced gas, just like today, out of the facility. It's rock underground. Now we're just putting it back in. I mean, a very simplistic way to look at it. So aerial dispersion, which is what the yellow lines there on the left slide, that's just a pipeline network connecting a number of different wells. That's what it would look like from Google, from outer space. Simple facility. On the surface, you just see a wellhead. All that wellhead is a collection of valves that connect the pipe that's strung down hole. It's just a bunch of pipe that's screwed together, goes down however many feet deep. In our case, this particular facility is about 6,000 feet deep. And then it's plumbed up to get into the pipeline network. So that's what we have, basically. You've got wells at the beginning, you've got pipelines connecting them, compression to move it along, storage to take the highs and lows in or out, depending which way you're going, so that ultimately gas can be delivered to a market. What's the purpose for gas? It's to burn it. It's a fuel that burns. So in your home, in industry, to power electricity generation, whatever it might be the reason. And the big growth potential is with electricity generation. And why is all that? It's really because of the stability of gas now. These are the shale plays in the United States. And what's remarkable there is how many there are. And they're dispersed pretty much throughout the country. The first shale play that was really, that took off was the Barnett Shale. Why? Because George Mitchell was the guy that developed the technology. Where was George Mitchell? Well, he's down there in Houston, north of Houston, in that area. Mitchell Energy, who's been bought up since then. But anyway, Barnett took off. After that then, that's when the Northeast started opening their eyes and saying, well, my gosh, we know this Marcellus is down here. All the geologists have known about it since day one. It was a nuisance. If you were drilling, you wanted to get through it to go deeper to other reservoirs. And there were always gas shows, but very, very slight. The challenge was getting that gas out, unlocking it. And that's where the horizontal drilling and the massive hydraulic fracturing came into play. And it was applied at Barnett, and now is being applied at these shales throughout the country. Just zooming in there a little bit on the Marcellus. And this actually, in this area, the Marcellus is the one most of us hear about now. Devonian shales is just a time age, a geologic time frame. Marcellus is actually a part of that time frame. It's shallower. Marcellus is about, well, it differs, but in the Pennsylvania region where most of it's being produced now, 6,000 to 7,000 feet deep. Then there's another shale called the Utica that's starting to get all the press, especially up here, that's deeper than the Marcellus. In Ohio, it's about the same depth as the Marcellus is in Pennsylvania. These structures dip very steeply. It's not all just uniform common sand out there. So there's a lot of interest in eastern Ohio on the Utica now, soon to grow. Marcellus just absolutely took off like wildfire over the past 4 years. This map just shows well locations. It's probably tough to see from the back, but the little blobs that you can make out back there are simply individual permitted wells that have occurred in the past 2 years. So this is just the drilling activity that's either occurred or going to occur that different companies have applied for permits for, mostly in Pennsylvania, which once again is hard to pick out on that slide, but the swath goes through the big part of PA. And then over there in Ohio, there's some little triangles if you look closely. Those are the Utica permits so far. So Marcellus, there's hundreds and hundreds of wells. Utica, we're in the tens right now. It's just in its infancy, but it's the next thing that's going to be the next big thing. Oh, one other, move back to that for a minute. One thing I should mention, I mentioned about propane and butane, we call heavier hydrocarbons or liquids in the natural gas. Up in northeastern PA, that gas is almost pure methane. Little to no processing is needed. It can go right into the pipeline system, hence that huge density of wells up there. That's the reason that so many are being drilled. They don't need to be processed. You just drill them, get it right to market. Down in southwest PA, where there's another large chunk of wells being drilled, they do contain the propanes and butanes and ethane. There's a big market in that liquids and a lot of money being made taking that propane and butane out because it's valued with the price of oil. Natural gas is on its own. So big market down in southwestern PA, northwest West Virginia, and also up in northeast PA, and a little bit different component in the gas. And then our system, as John mentioned, we're lucky enough to be situated right on top of it. So the transport away, it's been a big plus for us, and we're looking forward to the future. On this map, you can't hardly see them once again, but the little blobby bluish green areas, that's where our storage fields are located. We've got them, as I mentioned, dispersed throughout. We're looking at, well, once again, storage, what's its purpose? Its purpose from a gas transmission standpoint is to hold gas basically in the summer when markets are low. Of course, now power gen's picking up, so it isn't always going in. Sometimes we're coming out. And in the winter, we're definitely going to market. Northeast gas market is driven by the cold weather, and it always will be. So where's the gas coming from? Supply side. This picture here, I put 2012 on the chart just to show where we are today. But looking at this, the big thing to take away from this one is the Gulf of Mexico gas, which are these two bottom ones, offshore and onshore. In 2005, 2006, we're looking at just south of 20 BCF being delivered from the Gulf of Mexico. Today, it's down closer to 10. And that was a concern this country had with natural gas over the years. It's a dwindling supply. We're going to have to import LNG to keep up with the demand. Poof, all that went away when the shale gas really took off. And that's what the other bars on there show ultimately. And the next slide will pinpoint that a little more, the one after this one. But this just shows today, where are we with shale gas, non-shale gas, and where are we going in the future. Basically, we'll hit the next slide, it'll show it better. Doubling our delivery by 2025 from, this is 2025, from the shale gases. Once again here, 2005, 2006, shale gas was delivering, what's that, 2-3 BCF per day. Now we're up to 20 plus, projected to be up to over 40. That's about 5 BCF every 2 to 3 years of additional gas coming online. Of course, it's going to need a market. Today, there's no new markets really out there. It's got to happen, and that's what I'll hit next. But anybody remember Rita, Katrina, the hurricanes, 2005, 2006? At that time, go back to the Gulf of Mexico slide there when there was about 10 BCF coming in offshore. When Katrina hit New Orleans area and came through the Gulf of Mexico, it basically wiped out all the supply that was coming into the United States from the Gulf of Mexico, 10 BCF per day. DOE, the Department of Energy, was calling all of us interstate operators that had storage and saying, what can you guys do for energy security in this country without that supply heading into the winter? What are we going to do? Our purpose in life is really to keep grandma warm. That's why we exist. It's to move that energy to keep families warm in their homes. So storage could help out a little bit, but it's not a container that lasts forever. So, people were concerned, very concerned. Turned out the winter wasn't that cold and we got by that. But there was this huge concern about, man, we got to not rely on that Gulf of Mexico gas. And once again, what stepped in? The shale plays. So, I would call it luck, whatever it was, but it happened. Gas pricing down at Henry Hub. Henry Hub is a traditional place to price gas. It's in Louisiana. Why? Well, that's where all the Gulf of Mexico gas came in this country, so it was a good price point. It's where all the trading takes place related to prices there. I think that's going to change here in the near future with the shale gas, and there'll be another price point up in the Northeast, but we'll see. But anyway, this was simply to show the scale there goes from 1990 to the middle of 2011. So on the left side of the chart are the 90s, and it looks fairly stable. I mean, this is end-of-month closing prices on gas. Not too bad, slowly increasing. There were some good spikes in there. But the 2000s were absolutely blowouts. $8 differences in a month time. There are people making huge amounts of money off of that, but as a consumer, it really hit folks in the pocketbooks, and that was tough to take. So that's always been the rub on gas. Is it reliable long term, or are we going to get price blowouts? Once again, I think the shale plays are going to change that. We've got basically the same slope, if you will, on this price curve currently, but moving forward with it, we're going to have much less of volatility. Gas used to be the most volatile commodity traded out there, and I don't think it'll be that way. The prices are expected to range from $4 to $5 for the next 10 years. So that's a good thing for consumers. It's also a good thing, I think, for everybody that operates with natural gas. Gas demand, I hit the supply there, the demand side. This one shows, this is from EIA, it just simply shows the capacity additions by year for electric generating, going back 1930 to present there. And the gold is gas-fired, natural gas-fired electric generation. I think we all probably know this, but over the past decade, most of the new electricity generation in the U.S. was based on natural gas. There's some renewables in there. That's the other peak out there on the right side of the slide. And the expectation is that this is what will happen going forward, which is what this slide shows. And once again, this is capacity additions taken from the EIA. This report just came out in, I believe this was in their April or July. They had an annual report. But this one shows 4 bars there, a nuclear bar, a coal bar, a renewable, and natural gas. So from 2010 to 15, EIA showing a lot of renewables coming online. That's the green bar. And the natural gas is the one right beside it, the gold-brown color. And then in 2016 to 20, the next 5-year increment out there, pretty much a drop-off. And kind of wondering, well, why is that taking place? And all that really is the capacity that's been added in the past decade plus this 5-year period from 10 to 15 is greater than what the demand is, taking it away. So ultimately, the capacity is going to not be built out as quickly as the demand catches up and more of that capacity is actually utilized. Then it's predicted 21 on out, natural gas is really going to be the fuel to fire the electric generation. Will this all come true? Who knows? Ultimately, consumers want to pay the least price they can for their electricity. That to me is going to be the bottom line. Whatever commodity that is that can allow that to happen, that's the way this country is going to head. This one just shows a similar thing with the pipeline capacity build-outs that are coming. So there's many pieces along the way, from drilling those wells, the electric generation, pipeline capacity. Every one of these is going to require significant investment, a lot of people getting employed. It's all good news stuff for this country, and hopefully less reliance on the outside. Looking at how shale's going to impact things, I'll just touch on this slide briefly, but it's showing, and I doubt you could read that well in the back, but by regions of the country, what were effectively net importers and exporters of natural gas. In the Northeast, which I'll focus on, required gas coming in, hence all the pipelines that came up to the Northeast to deliver that demand. But by 2025 is what we're looking at, it's going to be, or expected to be, an exporter. The shale plays, Marcellus, Utica, will be delivering so much gas that the Northeast is going to now push that gas to somewhere else. It's going to be more than we need. Midwest will continue to be an importer, a need and a growing need. Chicago area, down in the South, pretty stable. You got a lot of Barnett and Haynesville and other shales that are moving into that region. And then out west, continuing to chip away at the needs that are out there. So I'm suspecting more power generation out that way. This next slide is one I like. Took this one from Bentech Energy. They provided this to us at an INGA conference, but this shows a little different view. Parts of the country, different supply sources, and basically the direction the gas is flowing, I'll say yesterday. Now, with Marcellus growing and the southeast supply area, both of those are shale plays growing and growing in quantity. Just watch how the arrows change size and shape, and as we move through this here. We're going to see less gas moving to the northeast from the southeast. because the Marcellus can cover it. That southeast is expected to go towards mid-continent, Chicago area, where they still need more gas. That's one change that we're seeing. Canada used to be shipping gas in through New York into the region. That's dropping off, and if anything happens, we'll probably ship gas back to Ontario in Canada from the U.S., from the Marcellus region. A little bit moving more out west. We'll get Rex on here. We had, it just flipped it around, but the Rockies Express pipeline came from the Rockies. Where did it terminate? Eastern Ohio. Where does that go to? Marcellus country. Don't need that anymore. So, the expectations are that pipeline will start going the other way, most likely to Chicago first, and then ultimately, all that Rockies gas will probably head out west, less of it coming over east. So, that's probably the biggest impact that we would expect to see happening. Now, personally, looking at our company alone, I can tell you what's happening because we see it. Historically, we got gas from the Gulf Coast, Columbia Gulf. It came up as sister pipeline, delivered to our pipelines up here in the Northeast, was dispersed north and to the east. Our biggest market areas are this area, D.C., Baltimore, Virginia, and in Ohio. We still have a huge market. But that was the general direction of our flow. With our pipeline and our storage the way we have it, it's pretty simple for us to change flow. We add a little header system here or there on a compressor location, and we'll move it elsewhere. And there it comes. So remember the big Marcellus region there in southwest PA, northwestern West Virginia. That's a big supply source for us. 4 years ago, we were getting 50 million a day, and I know these numbers may not mean anything to you, but just take them. 50 million a day of gas was entering our system near the Pittsburgh area. Today, it's 450 to 500 million a day. 4 years, changed almost 500 million. No new markets, really, to speak of. Markets are the markets. It's kind of a closed system. So what's happening is displacement of gas. Gas is coming in up here closer to the marketplace. Less is coming in from the southwest, as we call it, the Gulf of Mexico area. We have a lot of interconnections with other pipelines. It's not just ours up here. And everywhere there's an interconnection, there's a possibility of trading gas. So it moves around. It's pretty liquid. This is just a depiction here on the Google Earth map, our system there in turquoise now, but just showing this movement from Pittsburgh south, now coming east. And that's pretty much the flow of gas now. Not every day, but general trending. And this is one of the things I just pulled out of Pi pretty quickly the other day, looking at Owings Mills, Maryland, which is just north of Baltimore, one of our pipeline interconnects. And one of the things about the Marcellus, where we're getting it, is the heat content, the BTU value of the gas. As I mentioned, butane, propane taken out, mostly methane left. In this case, the southwestern PA, there's ethane in the gas stream also. Ethane is extremely difficult to get out of the gas stream. Well, not extremely difficult, but very costly. You need a cryogenic cracker plant to get it out. You got to make the gas very, very cold to get the ethane out. So you need a market for it. And today, it just doesn't exist up there in that Pittsburgh area. So until there's a cracker built, and there's a lot of talk about them being built, that ethane is going to be an issue for pipeline companies like ours to deal with, because that heat content means something once it gets to the end user distribution network. Too hot, and there's concerns with melting furnaces effectively. If you're sending it to a gas plant, somebody that really needs a fine temperature range to build their product, they hate swings in BTU. They can deal with a change, but they can't deal with quick changes. This simply shows, and I know you can't read these numbers, but right in here, this is from April 1 this year through just last week. We're looking at about 1040 BTU right here. Then it jumps up now to almost 1080. Well, what happened in here and then further out to the more recent time is that's when we switched that flow from going north up into the Marcellus country to bringing that gas around and moving it east. And this kind of stuff's important for us for that simple reason of dealing with our customers. It at least gives us the forewarning that, if nothing else, we need to inform our customers hotter gas is on its way. Be prepared for it, and we just have better dealings with them. So I'm an operationals guy, so I like to look at data for operational reasons, and this is just one of the things that we can use Pi for. So my takeaways from all this, one thing is that I didn't mention really, but the gas infrastructure that we have out there, the pipelines, the distribution system, they're pretty darn old. They've been around a long time. I mentioned the 1960s horsepower. Our pipelines were mostly built after the war, or the World War II, the big war, 40s, 50s, and 60s. And that's how old they are. They're getting older every day. So we're going to be spending a lot of money improving infrastructure, replacing infrastructure, because reliability and flexibility are the key to our company's performance. Hence, a lot of the data needs on the compressor side with the moving parts to know what's going on. Shale plays have changed the flow already for us, and they'll be changing for many other companies. But we're able to change. It doesn't really matter what direction the gas is flowing. We'll change as we need to. Biggest thing is stability of supply and I believe price long term with natural gas. So I really see it as a great fuel choice for the future. Most of the country believes that gas will fire the electricity generation for years to come here. We'll see how it goes. I mentioned the pipeline build out. Long term data, heard all morning long about how folks are using data. We're just another place that uses data. As I mentioned, John mentioned I'm an engineer, so data's been something near and dear to my heart for years. It's not just having the data, but it's having that capability to process it and utilize it and make decisions from it that make all the difference. So that'll wrap it up for me. I thank you all very much.
Great. Thanks, John. If you have a question, find those cards, write those down. We'll be having a little bit of a panel section after